Well, Ray, it's another Sunday, and the Mets are in what place?
The Mets are in first place.
Oh, and the Yankees are in which place now?
I believe they're in last place.
I believe that's true, too. It's almost like nothing has changed in the last week. But a couple of notable things like complete game shutouts and the debut of relief pitcher that looks like he's in need of relief have happened. So we'll talk about that next.
That sounds like a good plan.
But most importantly, the Yankees are in last. Hey, this is my friend, Ray.
What's up? This is my friend AD.
Ray is a tour manager who's traveled the world with everyone from the Beastie Boys to the Rolling Stones, engineered artists from Devo to Jane's Addiction to Toni Braxton, and looked after the careers of comics like Jim Gaffigan and Dane Cook.
And AD is a national radio personality, heard on stations across the country, who started off as a major label recording artist that gave me my first job as a tour manager.
I still can't believe that ended well.
Well, we still talk all the time now, and when we do, it's about music and cooking and baseball, especially our beloved New York Mets.
This is Bands, Barbecue, and Baseball. So, I don't know if this happened to you, but everyone from my father, who, by the way, decided to live his life in Kosovo. He went over there to do some legal human rights works back in the day and sort of wound up settling down there, really likes it, go figure. But my father, who lives in Kosovo, who I painstakingly set up with an MLB account so he could watch the Yankees. Everyone from my dad in Kosovo to huge Dodger fans that I'm friends of, to huge Yankee friends that I'm fans of, huge Yankee fans that I'm friends with have said to me, you know what? I don't care what's happening with my team. Every time deGrom starts, I'm going to be watching that live.
Yeah, that's what's been now termed as appointment watching, where you literally have to pencil it in or make an appointment. Say I'm not going to miss a deGrom start because you can't take your eyes off him. You know, every time he pitches, you want to see what he's going to do. You know, and so what's amazing too is that the redundancy of how the Mets just literally haven't scored for him, or kind of left it to where he has to do the main hitting or driving in a run. I was very, very happy that they gave him a comfort zone, at least this game. You know, like if it is a comfort zone to him, I'm encouraged, because that's what he deserves. He deserves them to score a couple of runs for him. At
least the ones that he doesn't get for himself.
yeah, exactly. I mean, the way that he's hitting right now is typical of what he was doing. The way he's pitching right now, you know, the comparisons they keep making to some
Seaver and Koufax.
Pitchers.
Yeah,
Koufax is, I think, the most interesting comparison, because he did kind of come into pitching a little bit late. It's not like he started at like 21 years old into the league. He was actually, I believe, a shortstop, and then came over into pitching and made his debut as a pitcher a couple of years later than necessarily some others would, and he's putting together what may very well be a Hall of Fame career in just this bit of time. That's very Koufaxian.
Yeah, no, I mean, it really, for anybody that hasn't cottoned on to it, we are, of course, talking about the historic outing that Jacob deGrom had, the full game shutout that he pitched against the Washington Nationals, which was incredible. And I think the big part of the reason why so many people are now saying that every start deGrom has, they're going to watch it live, is because there's no replicating the sense of something like that creeping up on you. You don't switch on the game on a Friday night and say Jacob deGrom's going to pitch a full game shutout. You can't. But then it starts happening, and you almost can't believe it as it's happening. And it really is something that you cannot hope to replicate unless you're live in it watching it.
Well, every single Mets game that starts, literally the first pitch in the back of my mind is, okay, the no-hitters is still in effect. You know, so I completely believe that, obviously with help from the defense, et cetera, not just what he has to do himself, but it certainly just feels like he's gonna get the chance to throw for a no-hitter at some point. He didn't give up any walks at all in that entire game. 15 strikeouts. He's literally on top of his game right now, and I'd love to see him rewarded with something like that. I personally advocated, I tweeted or twattered this a couple of days ago, that I firmly believe that the Mets would be very, very smart to just go to him and his reps and say, listen, let's take your contract, let's turn this into a lifetime personal services contract with the Mets, so that you pitch for as long as you want to. Every year, you are going to, you guaranteed equal pay to the highest paid pitchers that are out there in terms of what you're doing. Pitch as long as you want to. You want to pitch till you're 40 years old? Okay. And, they can make it doesn't even need to be reasonable terms in the fact that as a lifelong contract, as personal services and him being involved with the Mets, that, set yourself up for the rest of your life of working for the team, being their representative, potentially as a Hall of Famer. It's a kind of bringing in your own that we all wish the Mets would have done with Seaver, back in the day, and that they kind of did a little bit with Piazza towards the end of his career, just saying you are now a Met for you're a Met for life. I mean, so I think
Piazza was on his way to being a Met for life already, but when he hit that bomb after 9/11, that's like, I mean, oh God, I'll get choked up just thinking about it. It was such an incredible moment. It was such a moment in our history. It's something you can't plan for. He didn't plan for. Nobody knows anything like that is going to happen. But when it does happen, it's one of those moments that will have him cemented in your mind forever as a Met for all the right reasons. And Jacob deGrom is rapidly building up a set of those moments where he's just going to be fixed in all of our minds. And I think even if he stopped pitching tomorrow and that he was on the payroll for a phenomenal amount of money, what he would be worth as an ambassador to the game and an ambassador for the Mets, I think would make it worth it. Like, say he doesn't keep up this incredible run that he's having, because at some point it's going to have to come to an end, knock on wood, no time real soon. But just him as a figurehead for the organization, I think you're right. Whatever it takes to get him locked up as a Met for life is what you do right now.
Yeah, and I mean, personally, that will show the fan base. It'll show the whole rest of the league, etc. It's kind of like, I wouldn't call it necessarily groundbreaking, but it kind of maybe sets up things that teams would possibly do. The San Diego Padres could have, probably did, locked up Tony Gwynn as you're Mr. Padre. You're the representation of the Padres. You're not going anywhere. And so whether it's during your playing career, during your coaching career, during if you wanted to be a manager, if you wanted whatever you wanted to do, similar to how they did with David Wright, because David Wright now works in the front office as I think special assistant to the general manager is the title that he has. But obviously it's a flexible thing that I'm sure David, he makes up what he's got to do and what they need him to do, and go out and wave your cat for certain things, be involved literally in some decisions or giving your input into decisions. I foresee a role for deGrom like that for the rest of his life if he wants.
There's one problem with that. And the problem is this: Jacob deGrom is not a personality. And you know what Jacob deGrom is to me? Jacob deGrom is the Leonardo DiCaprio of the pitching world. There are other actors out there that exactly what they're feeling when they're feeling it, because they're on Twitter, they're on Instagram, they're talking to press, they're doing interviews, they're doing all these things. Leonardo DiCaprio doesn't do any of that stuff. Like, he doesn't need to, he doesn't want to. And because of that, when I see him in a movie, I'm not distracted by what he said in his last interview. I'm just thinking, I'm buying into his character. I think Jacob deGrom has made a conscious effort to really play his cards close to his chest. Like, when Marcus Stroman is feeling something, the world knows about it on Twitter 5 seconds later. And I love that about Stroman. I think it's great. I think it's entertaining. I think it's awesome. But Jacob deGrom has a legendary poker face. Like, you don't know what's on his mind, and I think that's a big part of the strength. It's what makes him intimidating. You don't know what he does when he goes home at the end of the day. He's probably just, doing whatever he does. He's probably hanging out with his kid and his wife and doing normal everyday stuff. But the mystique that he's built up around himself by not talking much is just, he lets his pitching do his talking for him, and it makes everybody lean in and makes everybody curious, and it makes him enigmatic, and it makes him, and I'm sure this is more part of it, a whole lot more scary to opposing batters.
Yeah, and at this stage of his career, because he did come from being a positional player, an infielder, to then being a pitcher, doesn't mean at all that he might not transition literally into. I could literally see him being a part of the pitching coach staff at some point. I think he's going to write his own ticket, basically, and
yes,
whether he's the most outgoing or this and that, all of that, I think can kind of come together. And as I said before, like, literally, he probably is going to make his own. He's going to make his own way, one way or the other. He's said publicly that he'd love to finish his career with the Mets. Let's make it so.
It's just like, these agents probably like, Ixnay. Like, say you like, the warm weather in Florida. Say you like the warm weather in Los Angeles. Say, like, no, I wouldn't mind being a Met for life. I see how it went for David Wright. That seems cool. Like, so I mean, but I don't think there's any harm in that. Like, and it's so funny because this is again his incredible poker face. Like, when the season was starting and the whole thing with Bauer happened, they were like, hey, what do you think of Bauer getting all that money? More than you, right? And he was like, well, he went a different route than me. He went free agency, and I chose to do this. It didn't even faze him a teeny little bit. And it made it clear, like, he has other priorities than just trying to get the most money possible. Plus, right. I mean, that guy, if he does feel like doing a Ford commercial or something like that in the future, he can make all the money he wants to make doing pretty much what he's going to be able to write his ticket as a part of the Mets organization and doing anything else that he wants to do for the rest of his career. He's got that much heat at the moment, and enough heat to where it will never go away.
Yeah, and the opportunity to either defer monies, say the going rate on a top shelf, top of his game pitcher right now is that Garrett Cole $33 million a year threshold with a lifelong contract of, like, you pitch however you want to pitch. Maybe he's making $25 million a year or $20 million a year, and it's all deferred and still coming in. He's saving the Mets and helping the Mets huge. He's gonna get it's a contract that he's gonna live through and go through. I mean, I think it's a win-win for him and for the team. Same as I anticipate and expect that they're going to be going to Thor. They're going to go to Syndergaard very soon and be like, listen, mutually beneficial. Let's work out something. You're recovering from Tommy John. We believe in you. We want you here. Let's make this all nice and happy and work. So I think there's going to be actually the opportunity for several of those things happening during the course of this season.
Yeah. What's interesting? Like, I always think about this with, like how sort of like stone-faced deGrom is and how he has a reputation in the clubhouse and outside of the clubhouse as being incredibly serious. He's a very serious guy. But, one of the most played clips in all of baseball history is Bartolo Colon hitting his home run in San Diego. And whenever you see that, it cuts to the dugout and you see like the 3 or 4, just what was it, 2016? So, not that long ago, you see that version of deGrom in the clubhouse hopping up and down with his sort of like long hippie hair, looking basically like a human puppy, like out of his mind happy. And you remember during those postseason interviews that he was doing where like Daniel Murphy would sit on a chair and he, the merry prankster, would come and like knock it down a little bit. So it would like, do you remember seeing those things? Like he was like this happy-go-lucky, goofy, merry prankster guy, and he got super freaking serious. And I'm sure he's not that serious all the time. I just think he's got that sort of like that poker face, enigmatic, intimidating thing working for him. So it's interesting. I wonder if, when his pitching career is done, he's going to be like Mr. Man About Town, like super happy on Twitter all the time, talking about his favorite place to get a chocolate sundae or something like that. I mean, because like the contrast between, happy-go-lucky deGrom and super serious deGrom when Cy Young's, shuts people down, like most intimidating, scary batter and pitcher in history is so stark. I just wonder how much of that's calculated.
Probably calculated, probably just also gamesmanship. I was watching a documentary about the '88 Dodgers and about Kirk Gibson coming to the team, and I mean came to the team with the express reason that he had World Series playoff experience with Detroit, and this was them going out and getting somebody. And there's a great story about him showing up during spring training, and literally making it known to everybody that I don't joke around about playing or anything, and I'm here to win. And he threw the gauntlet down so hard on his teammates when he showed up. And there was another part of that story where they played a practical joke on him, just to kind of see how he'd react, and he flipped his lid on them of like, what the F are you guys doing? Anything that you're trying to distract away from baseball and playing the best you possibly can and working on fundamentals. He went through this great diatribe, and it just showed of a serious gamesmanship of like, this is how we're going to play. Supposedly Mookie Betts, when he showed up at the Dodgers when he got traded and then obviously signed, hadn't played a single game with them yet, but showed up at spring training and I believe had his own team meeting that they were all there, and he took the reins. He just literally said, this is how I play. This is how I prepare. This is how I show up. And, literally raised the gauntlet for everybody. I can't fault anybody for that kind of serious gamesmanship of like, I'm here to win. I want to win. I'm going to take this incredibly seriously, and I expect you all to match me in terms of how we're going to go about this. So, and to make a Mets correlation to that, it's not that I see a lackadaisical or kind of laid back kind of attitude about it, but I mean Lindor certainly came in talking very big about that exact same thing. He's slow. He's coming slow out of the gate. His numbers aren't fantastic just yet, but he definitely has that presence of, this is how we're going to play. Pete seems to be kind of this, I don't know, I wouldn't call him a spokesman, but he definitely is like, taking a determinative lead role in a lot of things about the team, media wise, et cetera. I really like seeing that, and it's kind of disheartening to figure out what's going on with Conforto in terms of whether he, there was talk about, him being another captain of the team at some point. And he's slowly coming around, but in terms of domination, or in terms of we're here to play and we will not back down, I'm still hoping and waiting to see the we're not backing down mentality come out with the team. I want to see them ferocious.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it's funny because Conforto talked about this when, like, before the season started, people were like, do you see yourself in more of a leadership role? And he's like, yeah, I've grown up a little bit. I'm a little bit more mature. And if that's, going to be my role, then I'm comfortable with that. He certainly didn't shy away from it. And the whole sort of idea of a team captain thing and all of that seemed like it was looming large. But it's I would imagine, even if people look to you for that leadership, it must be very hard to feel like you've got any right to take the reins when you start the season slumping the way he did. At the very least, Lindor, who has not found his footing offensively, has, done a whole bunch of, this is the Lindor we paid for stuff on the field defensively. And so, his sort of lead from behind. It was funny. There was that great shot of Marcus Stroman, who did not have a good game against the Nationals on Saturday, having trouble settling down. And you could see him look back at Lindor, and Lindor was like, hey, chill. Everything's cool. Like he was looking to Lindor to settle himself down. And so like it's clear that he fell into that role, and he doesn't need to be batting 500 for people to think of him as a leader. And probably Conforto doesn't either, but Conforto started in such a skid, and he's got, so much looming over him financially. I think that just has to be messing with his head. There's no way you can be thinking like, hey, there's $330 million on the line and not have it affect the way you play. That said, he's not slumping like he was to start the season, so maybe we'll see him come into his own a little bit more in that way. But at the same time, he's probably got to have, like his agent's Boris, right?
Yes, his agent's Scott Boras.
Yeah, so legendarily snaky agent, as you pay your agent to be. But I'm sure Boras is telling him, hey, don't be chummy with those guys in the clubhouse. We need you. We need them to think that you might be ready to walk at any second now if we're going to have the front office think that you're like, the vibe has to go through the clubhouse. You know what I mean? Like, so it's, and had he had a hot start to the season, I'm sure that, the extension talks would have been, let's quick, get him now. Like we have to get him now. The longer he keeps this up, the more his price goes up. But now I have a feeling they're waiting it out, going like, all right, the longer a slump he goes in, if we want to hold on to him, the cheaper we can get him for. And it's a horrible way to look at things, but when there's hundreds of millions of dollars on the line, you got to do what you can to get you got to do what you can to get the best deal for the club that you're working for. So you got money to go get a reliever, an extra bat when you need it.
Yeah, that almost became apparent during the Cubs series that we just got wrangled on, because it really, really felt like, any other team going through that, even this early in the season, would be looking at, okay, we're showing our weaknesses right now. And if we're gonna stay relevant and on top of things, right now we should be looking at whether we're going to bring in a third baseman that has better defensive numbers than, say, Davis, but can certainly bring some offense as well. I mean, it wouldn't be surprising. And the successful teams, they fix their holes in the boat as they're going along. So
third base is the obvious gaping hole. Like where you have like you got Guillorme, the utility infielder, who you're going to put there every once in a while because he plays sparkling defense, and then you got JD Davis, who is a bit Butterfinger to start the season, but also just really offensively he's producing. Like he produced today. It was really something. It was his day for sure. But it's one of those, third base is the hot corner is the question, and it has been ever since we didn't have David Wright.
It's very, very true. It's third base is a spot where they almost seemed content to say, well, you know what, for the sake of JD's bat, we're gonna put him there at third base. Something you and I discussed last week in terms of what I firmly believe is people get typecast into roles or the role playing, and you're very right about Guillorme. I mean, he's shown himself to be a starter type that that could certainly be right there in that spot. Had the DH been part of the National League this year, a lot of things probably would have been a lot more kind of obvious to do. Obviously, with Dom, etc. I'm amazed at Pete's development with his defense at first base. I mean, he's kind of really playing himself into the fact that he needs to be there. Yeah, I mean, what he has done defensively since the start of the season, it's like we were saying, he talks it into existence. It's like that Panic at the Disco song, High Hopes. Like you got to fully expect that things are going to work out and make it happen for yourself. It's funny because people laugh, you're going to get your life advice from John Bon Jovi. But John Bon Jovi said something a little while ago when he was talking about being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And they're like, you're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame now. What's the best advice you could give to a young musician starting out? And he was like, I don't care if you're a young musician, an old musician. I don't care if you don't want to have anything to do with music whatsoever. No matter who you are or what you're doing, the best thing I can tell you is be optimistic. I've always been optimistic about things I've had no right to be optimistic about. Like, he was like, when I was being a musician, like, there's no way you're going to, go be a rock star. There's no way. He's like, but I fully expected it. And he's like,
like, and if I hadn't expected it, it probably wouldn't have happened. He seems like the kind of guy who puts a lot of stock in the fact that it doesn't matter that he's a gazillionaire. Every single morning, a John Bon Jovi type skips gleefully out to the mailbox, fully expecting to have won the Publishers Clearinghouse sweepstakes when he opens it up and goes, well, probably it'll happen tomorrow. Like, he expects things to happen. And when you hear Pete talk, he expects things to happen. He was like, oh man, it's going to be great. I'm going to win a Golden Glove, probably get another batting title. It's going to be awesome. Like, he fully expects all this stuff. And, it goes back to that, that sort of college paper he wrote where he got a C on his dream life paper or whatever it was, because his professor told him to be more realistic. Like, you've got unrealistic goals. And he's like, every single one of those goals happened. And I think, that spirit of optimism, obviously that's not going to get you all the way. You got to be good. You got to be a good baseball player. But I think that that mindset has so much to do with it for the people that get it done.
Sure, but it also, he didn't list one of his dreams as playing in the NBA, which might have not been as realistic as a dream, and maybe his professor might have been smart. Any professor, if I would have told him, said, "Hey, I want to be in the NBA," would have said, "Well, the fact that you're 5'6" and I'm a little white guy who can't play basketball, like, you might want to tone your dreams there a little bit." So maybe that had a bit of aspect or part to it, but you're totally right about putting yourself in the right position, putting yourself in a position that you can do, and believing in yourself enough to do it. That's what Nimmo looks to me like every single at bat and every single thing that he's doing. He looks like a guy who's just, I'm going to try the best I possibly can all the time. And I think we have an all-star in the making. I think he's an all-star potentially this year anyway.
Nimmo is just, and it's that thing where he's become aggressively patient at the plate. Like his on base percentage, and he's swinging at the pitches. He'll make you. He refuses to expand the strike zone. He's aggressively patient. He will make you throw him something that he's going to hit. Like, he will, and he's done it over and over again. And I think it's one of those interesting things because, a lot of the time you see somebody have a level of improvement like that and you go, how you doing this? And nobody has that question anymore. It's like they look at it and go, yeah, he's really, really patient. He is he's probably the most disciplined hitter in baseball right now. And I think that has everything to do with how he's doing what he's doing. What are we like? How many games are we? 11 games in? Something like that? Like, it's not that large of a sample size yet, but for these 11 or so games, he has just been so patient at the plate, and it's paying dividends for him.
Yeah, and he's showing his way. The fact that they were doubting whether he could take over center field, be a starting center fielder. There was hesitancy about all of that with him. So I'm extremely happy for him. I'm sure guys like McNeil, who is not necessarily starting off, that incredibly well. He's trying to deal with that. It's been an interesting week. After through the Cubs series, taking 2 out of 3 from the Nats, looking back at deGrom's fantastic start, even seeing Stroman's issue specifically seemed to be frustration with the umpire, and what he was calling, and maybe let it bother him a little too much, and so you're gonna have those games, you're gonna get times where you're not fantastic. But the team themselves had, to me, showed this week, that why we think of them as being a really good elite team, but they can't ignore the signs and the signals of what's going on with the team. For instance, not hitting with runners in scoring position, not feeling like they have any faith in themselves or determination, or taking over that situation, saying, we've got this.
Also, Stroman struggled, and Stroman. It's funny because Stroman, was this his third start? It it was his third or his fourth start.
No, it was his fourth
start.
He was 3-0.
Yeah, so like the first three starts he had, you could look at that and go like, this guy is a Cy Young candidate. This guy had, this guy is Stroman and deGrom are going to be chasing each other for Cy Young candidacy this year based on, those first three performances. And then, he kind of fell to pieces a little bit, and Stroman is a guy where exactly how he's feeling all of the time. He wears his heart on his sleeve. The guy is the exact opposite to deGrom in that way, in that he has no poker face. Like, you see it in his face exactly how he's feeling, which is probably not the most awesome thing if you're an opposing batter. But if he's feeling really good, it's intimidating as hell, because you can see that it's just not like, when Stroman's feeling good, he has this expression on his face where you as the batter feel like it's probably not going to go my way. This at bat will probably not end well for me. But you can see when he's rattled, and I think people take, it makes it easy for people to take advantage of that. But what's interesting about that Stroman thing, everyone was like, oh man, Stroman, he blew it. I'm like, we didn't score a run. Even if he did, like, Stroman didn't blow it, the batters blew it. Like, Stroman, had not the greatest outing after three unbelievable outings, and the batters couldn't pick him up. Like, at this point, it's interesting. Who do you blame this on? Because at this point, I'm looking at hitters not getting it together. When you have someone like McNeil who's struggling, when you have someone like Conforto who has struggled mightily, when you have someone like Francisco Lindor, these three guys can hit. It's well established that they have an ability to hit. So when they go through struggles offensively, you start to look at, hitting coaches and go like, it's your job to Yoda this situation and make it happen. What's the holdup?
I think you're totally right about the fact that the anticipation or expectation of the coaching staff, of management, et cetera, is, they're making decisions, which people did question several of Rojas's decisions in the first several games of the season. A couple of issues. Chillin Davis not being physically there last year because he opted out of being there. It certainly will come back to him a bit in terms of just motivation. What are you instilling in these hitters as to what their modus operandi is coming up with a man in scoring position and less than two outs, and all the different scenarios. Hitters are streaky. Yes, they're going to go through things like that. But when you're dead last in the league with runners in scoring position, there's a big differential between the best team at that and the worst team at that. And so something's got to be looked at in terms of just what the philosophy is with man in scoring position, how intensely they're going after, say looking at pitches. If a pitcher is in and they're going deep in the count, that philosophy is that's not by accident. Mm-hmm. That there's a philosophy there of forcing a pitcher to throw the pitches that you are waiting for, and having the patience to sit on or sit off of pitches that are off the plate. That becomes an intensity when there's runners in scoring position. If you get into a two-strike situation with runners in scoring position and you're stuck with the bat on your shoulder and not swinging at a close pitch, that philosophically is something that your coaches need to say to you. Listen, you're not going to hit the ball with the bat on your shoulder, and in a two-strike situation with a close pitch, you don't have the luxury of sitting there and making a decision on it. You've got to broaden your strike zone. You've got to broaden your defensive swing of that at bat. So I do have to say that if this situation continues, it's gonna manifest itself in a management or coaching and how they're bringing about that to the team.
It's interesting, and what really I always think that when you look, very clear that Francisco Lindor, Jeff McNeil, and Michael Conforto can hit baseballs. This is well established. There is a historical precedent for it. So when those guys are having problems, you look to the coach. But it was interesting because one of my favorite things about this season so far is Robert Gesellman coming back and looking good. Wally Backman said that he was the one. Wally Backman has long-standing problems with the Mets front office, obviously. But Wally Backman, on his way out, part of his smack talking the Mets organization was like, I was the one that spotted deGrom for what he was. And you know what? You know who else I spotted? Robert Gesellman. He's just as good as deGrom. Watch. And I was like, ooh, really? Okay. And then Gesellman had a bit of a disaster of a year last year. And it's interesting to see him come back and do what he's done. I was like, this is great. This is fantastic. This is what I was hoping for. And it turns out last year they tried to make him a swing and miss guy, and they went, that clearly didn't work. Go back to what you were doing before. And he's back to being a sinker slider pitcher, and he's pretty dominant doing it. So it's interesting when you hear a story like that and you go, you mean, we lost a season of elite pitching because you gave him a bum steer telling him to do something that wasn't natural for him based on, sabermetrics or something like that? Come on, so if, when you can have a pitching coach error of that nature, where you essentially destroy Robert Gesellman's season and make everybody wonder if he can still pitch, and then he can come back and do it the way he's good at, and everyone goes, oh man, he's lights out. It makes you wonder what the hell's going on with a pitching coach when Michael Conforto can't get it together and he's on the verge of signing a third of $1 billion contract,
Yeah, and also I firmly believe the change of scenery philosophy sometimes of either a guy getting sent down to work on things or change of scenery. I mean, look at Steven Matz is the perfect example. Steven Matz is doing very, very, very well in Toronto. And people can say, oh, well, maybe that's because the Mets didn't believe in him or anything. No, it probably is. He needed a change of scenery. He needed to refresh his batteries. He's doing it there, and he's showing that he can do it. That kind of scenario and situation, I think, plays out in our entire roster of take a look at guys and what they're doing and what they're going to be able to fill in. Almora, Almora was not an afterthought, but his role originally when they talked about him coming to the team was, he's a really, really good defensive center fielder. We need to be able to stick him in places. He's proving exactly what role they asked him to do. He's now doing that. Pilar, like a whole bunch of different players on this team they've got to find their positions, their spots. They got to make things happen when they get the opportunities to, or else it's going to be, hey, you know what? Let's try something else. We're gonna shift things around a bit. So going right now, being almost 20 games into the season, a good judge of how your season is after the first 25 games. You look at how the team is doing after 25 games in. So that's literally only a couple more games from now. We are just above 500. We've got a great battle coming up starting tomorrow, starting Tuesday with Boston. The Red Sox are super hot and they're coming into Citi Field.
They're in first. That's that's the AL first place and the NL first place. That's a battle of the AL and the NL East first place teams. That's exciting stuff. And you know what I wonder about, and it really so a big part. I don't know. I don't know if anyone takes this all that seriously, but it keeps coming up over and over again. When Francisco Lindor fails to produce, especially with runners in scoring position, people go, he's figuring out how to hit in the National League. And he hasn't seen most of these pitchers. They don't, he doesn't know them yet. And once he gets them figured out, boy, it's going to be a different story. I'll be very curious to know. I'm not familiar enough with who is on the Red Sox pitching staff and how many times he's faced them before. But if it is a matter of it's a National League problem, okay, let's see what's going on when he goes up against the AL team.
I have been paying slight bit of attention to the Red Sox, partially because they originally were spoken about in really bad terms. People were looking at them and saying, "Oh, they're not going to really be anything this year." They didn't, they didn't have a humongous off season, in terms of what they were doing and everything. So they're making it work with what they got, and in a division where, other than the Yankees, I mean, even the Orioles are not doing that horrible. The Rays are always right there. Toronto has shown itself to be a great team.
It's funny. I think that when that first series of ours got canceled because of the Nats getting COVID, I was like, what am I going to watch? I watch more non-Mets baseball in that first week of us not playing than I think I have in the last 5 years. And like one of the first things I watched was like, Harvey's pitching for the Orioles now. Let's see how he does. And I think he got the win that day. I was like, yeah, because I remember it was like, I can't believe I'm saying this, but Orioles win. And like, I was like, that's kind of cool. But they were playing the Boston Red Sox and they killed them. And I was like, wow, do the Red Sox really, I heard the Red Sox were supposed to suck this year, but I guess they really, really suck because they just got their asses handed to them by the Orioles with Matt Harvey starting. And I think Matt Harvey would be the first to say that he's still in the process of working his way back. He is not the Dark Knight of yore. So I was very surprised after seeing that game to watch the Red Sox shoot straight to first place. And I know nothing about them. I watch almost no American League baseball. I just cannot become emotionally attached to something if it's not the Mets. After living in Houston for over a decade, I've come to really, really, get invested in Astros games when I watch them. But other than that, I cannot, for the life of me, get excited about other teams playing. So, I'll be like, I don't know anything about the Red Sox, but I'm curious to see what the secret sauce is and hope it doesn't crush our hopes and dreams.
Yeah, I bleed blue and orange like Mets myself, but my philosophy is that everyone has a team that you cheat on your team with.
Yeah, secondary team. Yeah.
Yeah, your girlfriend team. Like
your side piece team.
Yeah, Friday nights for the wives.
What's the Sopranos expression? Gumats or something like that?
Guma. Yeah, a guma is your girlfriend. And so like with the old Goodfellas line, Friday nights were for the wives, but Saturday nights were for the girl, for the girlfriends, or vice versa. I can't remember.
So, when you cheat on the Mets, is it with the Red Sox?
No, not at all. Sympathetically, I lived in San Francisco for a while, so I've always had a sympathetic feeling towards the San Francisco Giants. Plus, I always had a sympathetic Dodger leaning, being grown up in born in Brooklyn. So I've always had a very, very soft spot for both the Dodgers and the Giants. Just inexclusive of the fact that they play where they play now. Mm-hmm. But when I lived in San Francisco, I really paid a lot of attention to the Giants. Being in LA a lot, I watched and was paid a lot of attention to the Dodgers. And in the American League, I was always very, very conscious and aware to know what was going on with the Yankees. I mean, this is literally from 2000 on when we played them in the World Series. Mm-hmm. I've always really, really, really paid attention to them. But being a baseball fan, I really kind of push myself to say that I'm aware and knowing what's going on. So I know that the Oakland A's just had a 13-game winning streak. I know that Seattle is doing better than they should. I know that, Seattle, I just pay attention.
Seattle's doing better than they should. The Oakland A's had a 13-game winning streak. One thing I am not aware of, did anyone have the Oakland A's picked to be good this year? Because I certainly wasn't aware of that.
They were considered to be they competitive, but there's always a caveat with the A's because it's the Billy Beane philosophy and the way that they go about their ways. They're dealing with they're always constantly dealing with a shortened payroll kind of situation, making things work. Their Moneyball situation, it's such an amazing movie to watch. Their situation has not really changed that much from the time when that movie was, conceived of, the book, etc., to now. They still exist in that kind of bubble of having to make it work with players that they can afford, making trades of people that they would love to hold on to, but turning them around for the pieces and parts that they need. So, the A's have had a decent team year in, year out for quite a while. It's just been their ability to translate that into getting into the playoffs and getting it done. And that division's a very, very interesting division. I mean, between Seattle doing better than anyone might have expected, the Angels. The Angels are in a very, very weird bubble right now in terms of Trout having a minor injury, so he's just day to day. He's not out, but he's day to day. But between Pujols, between Ohtani, between Rendon, and everything they've got, the anticipation is that the Angels need to bust out. And the one thing they really, really, really need is pitching. The Astros are right there at 10 and 11 right now. So the top 4 teams in the AL West are all really showing their wares and are doing very, very well.
The athletics thing is, I dump some built-in Mets prejudice into that, where I'm like, they're starting Jed Lowry, they clearly suck. Like that was like when I saw that before the season even started, I was like, I guess it's a throwaway season for them if they're starting that guy. And then I was like, oh, fine, okay, be that way. 13 game winning streak with Jed Lowry starting.
Yeah, that's frustrating to watch, but he took the money and ran with the Mets, but has been able to kind of turn it around to saying that he was told, I think by his doctors, that he could have surgery on his knee, that he wouldn't be out for a crazy huge amount of time, and that supposedly he was either not allowed to get the surgery by the Mets, or they I guess the medical staff of the Mets kind of leaned away from saying, no, you don't, you've got a brace on it, you don't need to have surgery if you don't want to. Evidently the surgery was the thing he needed, and the Mets medical staff and front office didn't encourage that. I mean, Mets fans are angry at the situation for all the obvious reasons, but the bottom line is the guy was injured and couldn't play, and he took the money and ran. But to hear him talk about it now, and there might be a certain amount of crocodile tears involved to mitigate the hatred from the Mets fan base, but he has said a couple times, he's like, I didn't know if I would ever be starting another game ever again. Like, I think he really was feeling as though his career was completely touch and go there. And if you're getting conflicting information from your doctor and your employer's doctor, who have a lot invested in your physical condition, it's got to be a really tough situation. Like, as much as you want to be angry at him, I cannot find it in myself to do it. But I did think that if they're starting Jed Lowry on the Oakland A's are having a write-off of a season. So far, not so much. Yeah, I look at Jay Bruce and how he handled this past couple of weeks coming to the Yankees in spring training, borderline making the team, through spring training into them, coming up for the season, and then him really showing that he's not elderly, he's not old. I think he's 36 years old. But really was showing that he lost a step, and he couldn't hit the way he was hitting before, and had to really come to an honest evaluation. Say, you know what? Okay, it's time for me to hang it up, and he did. Didn't try to play out the season or see what the Yankees want him to do, or if they were to send him down or give him his unconditional release so he can sign with somebody else. He was not catching up with today's pitchers, and his time was over. Well, I mean, it was interesting though, because he had a bit of a white hot spring training. Like, I remember, like, he was hitting bombs in spring training, and people were like, oh man, he's going to mess around and make the team. And he did, like, and everyone was surprised. And then just, obviously things went south for him really, really quickly there. I wonder if that was sort of like, okay, you can say you're retiring, or, we could do something that's kind of borderline humiliating for you. I guarantee that's exactly how it went. Yeah. I can guarantee. It's not like the Yankees had a whole lot invested in him. Like, it's not like you've been our guy for decades now, so we're going to do this right. It was just like, all right, pick your poison, dude. And they were also saying, listen, we've got a whole bunch of holes in the bottom of this boat that we have to plug up. So this is what we're going to do. Yeah. And again, that comes back to what we discussed last week, that I just literally think the Yankees have a directive of we want to get under the luxury tax, so we are not going to go over the luxury tax limit this year. come hell or high water, which is a very hard thing for a Yankee team to do in New York. It almost feels like a rebuild. And so, there was another great thing they showed about Stanton, that they've literally tied their success to Stanton's success, and he's crushed a couple of big home runs and etc. But when's he going to get hurt? Because he gets hurt every year. They've tied their hopes to his success, and that's a very very tentative kind of success.
It's an interesting one. Going back to like Jay Bruce going out that way, it reminded me that I heard both Mike Piazza and Big Papi say this about retiring. Like Big Papi, especially, his last season did not suck. Like if someone puts up those kind of numbers and they're playing for the Boston Red Sox, and putting them in good situations to go possibly all the way, the temptation is you can play one more season. Look what you did this season. Come on, you can do it. Look, you just did it. Why can't you do it now? 9 months or why can't you do it 9 months from now? And he said the same thing that Mike Piazza said. He was like, when you know. He was like, Mike Piazza said, when you don't have gas in the tank anymore, you really know it. Like I think it was interesting to see them both have very realistic visions of where they were at, and they're like, when your body says no, you know this.
Yeah, and that's very true. Circles back around to a lot of players that are going to be coming into their late 30s. And if you're a serviceable player, you maybe been a journeyman and have been around the league, or maybe right now your options are not looking so great. It's baseball. There's somebody else that they're going to plug in. There's some kid coming up. The whole point of the Bull Durham movie, of Kevin Costner's character, that he was one of the longest serving minor league players and secretively hit the home run record, in the minor leagues, which was a dubious distinction because to hit the most amount of home runs in the minor leagues means
you never got to the show.
Right. Exactly. You were there for a really long time. So I see a lot of players, I think, coming probably into their mid to late 30s with a very, very similar decision making process that's going to have to happen with them. And unless you're playing for lifetime achievement award type of records, there's probably there's not as much financial motivation, I would say, to hang on for as long as you possibly can. The teams themselves don't sound as committed to guys in those later years where they're looking at the younger players that they can take advantage of or at least dominate for the first several years of their career. So I think there's a lot of that where we'll see a lot of turnover of our what are considered veteran players just reaching a point where I'm a veteran. I've given it all I got. I played all through junior high school, college, into it, and like you said, my body just told me I'm done.
Yeah, there is no gas in the tank. Hey, before we run out of gas, I wanted to talk super quickly about about a guy who came up and literally looked like he was going to take a dump on the mound, but did not. Sean Reed Foley. He did great. Out of that Mats trade, the several pitchers that we picked up that we got for Mats, it was very, very nice to see, somebody come in and, make a good point of themselves. And the way that it looks like the Mets are doing it, between shuffling guys back and forth, between being the active roster or not quite, quote unquote, sending them down, but they're almost doing it in terms of like who's going to be available and rested or, is stretched out to be able to come in and play. The next thing is, all right, Yamamoto, you're up. You're coming in and showing us what you got. You look Lucchesi, you showed us what you got. We know there's not a spot you're going to be able to pitch in the next 10 days because of just our schedule. So rather than you sitting around, send him into a situation where he gets into his regularly scheduled routine of pitching and being stretched out, etc. And,
keep it fluid, keep it rolling.
I mean, the sample size is so small, but all indicators for someone like him is you really kind of look at him for someone who, he's great until he's not, and he seems to have like 3 good innings in him. Like, he seems to be either that whole thing where instead of starting pitching, you have an opening pitcher, or a long relief type of situation. Because I don't know, I don't pretend to understand pitching. Have you ever thrown a fastball with a radar gun?
Yes, I have, and I have reached the pinnacle of the high 70s, into like 78 or 79 miles per hour, like just literally probably because of body motion or not throwing enough with my legs or anything, or never being shown how to properly do it. It's an amazing skill. It's the fact that Guillorme got up there and pitched in that didn't he pitch in the Cubs series, like when we were getting blown out?
Yeah. No, I was like, you might be cool, but you're not going to be as cool as. Oh wait, who was it? Who was it that like walked up and hit a batter in that one series and like I did. Never mind. I can't remember.
Was it Hildenberger?
No. It was. Oh
no, it was Loop. Didn't Loop's
no,
first?
No. It was an infielder that they sent in to. It was Jose Reyes.
Oh,
like Reyes, like there was some situation where we were getting completely blown out, and they sent Reyes up to pitch, and he hit a batter like because he sucked, and the batter made like he was going to charge the mound for a second, realizing it was a complete joke. He was like, haha. And I was like, yeah, Guillorme pitching might be cool, but no one will ever be as cool as Jose Reyes beating guys from the Nationals at 54 miles an hour.
If you want to see something really cool along those same lines, take a look on YouTube for Ichiro pitching. They brought him in a similar situation. And if you know anything about Ichiro, and I've read autobiographies about him from the time he was a little kid, and the interest he generated literally in elementary, junior high school in Japan, as far as they knew that he was the one. Mm-hmm. They were tracking him through and he did pitch a bit. So there's a great YouTube of them bringing him in and him pitching, and in typical Japanese fashion, he went through everything like just the way you would expect him to. Like he took it very, very seriously. He showed that this wasn't a fluke kind of thing. That he was like, okay, I'm gonna get up and I can get up and do this. He had motion, he had movement on his pitches. Like it was actually amazing. So when those kind of scenarios happen, the mere fact that guys can, a shortstop that's got a rifle for an arm, might be able to get up there and just hurl a ball, but certainly doesn't have a spin rate or doesn't have a lockdown on movement of his pitches, etc. That's going to sit dead red for any batter that gets up there. 100 mile per hour pitch that does not move, a major leaguer can turn on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because I did like All-Star Fan Fest. I did the same thing. I don't know when did you when did you have your pitch measured?
Oh, this was several years ago.
So All-Star Fan Fest, I was broadcasting live from it in San Diego when the All-Star game was there a few years back. And every corner you go around, there's someone with a radar gun being like, "Want to see how fast your fastball is?" And I was like, "All right, I'll give this a go." But in front of me, there's a line of 12-year-olds throwing like 60 miles an hour. It's pretty impressive. And so I did this thing where I didn't want to follow a bunch of 12-year-olds that were throwing 60 miles an hour and make it look like I tried and couldn't throw that fast. So without any wind-up whatsoever, I just picked up a ball and threw it as hard as I could. And bear in mind, I pitched when I was in school, so I do know a little something, not anything worth writing home about. But I know how to pitch a baseball, in theory anyway. It had been an awful long time. And I broke 80. And
did you?
Yeah, I broke 80, and the woman with a speed gun was like, "You are the first person to break 80 all day long. In fact, probably all week long. And
you did it from the stretch?
I mean, there might have been some movement. I just didn't want to go into a big windup like I didn't want to try and pitch it like I did when I was in the 8th grade and wind up coming in under 60 miles an hour like this line of kids was. So I'm like, oh, I'm a freaking badass. Apparently, how remiss of me! I forgot. I need to remember who the hell I am in these situations. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go for it. And I threw 2 more balls, both with like full windups, pitching like I was, the full count in the World Series. And I lost 20 miles an hour off of each ball. Like, it's just like and I probably, I broke 80, so I'm happy about that. That's awesome. That's an awesome thing I did. But I don't think I'll ever do that again. And watching my velocity drop so quickly within the space of 3 pitches, I'm like, these guys go out here and do that for 100 plus. What the hell, man? How is this even possible? And it makes me think, like, I don't know. I genuinely don't know the science of pitching, because you do not need to be an enormous human being to throw it over 100 miles an hour, as Jacob deGrom is proving. Like, you look at someone who's humongous. You look at someone like Noah Syndergaard coming in and being built like, he went from being Thor to being the Hulk between one season to another, and that did not improve his velocity. In fact, that caused him to tear the lat. But nevertheless, it's, there's science, there's physics involved, and it's not just brute strength, but I don't know how they do it. I just don't know how they do it.
It's part of the whole mechanics and the whole body movement. The legs really come into it. From what I understand, there was a similar situation years ago with legendary reliever for the Mets, John Franco. And John Franco, the 2 things that we learned about John Franco were, if his pitches were down, he was successful. If his pitches were up, he was unsuccessful. And there was a time period for about 2 seasons that he really got interested and involved with weightlifting. And they kind of had to shut him down of it, because the weightlifting did not help at all with his velocity or anything like that. In fact, it kind of hindered his movements, because he wasn't as, flexible, Mr. Stretch Armstrongish kind of guy. He was getting a bit more tightened and buff, and it did not have a positive effect on his pitching.
Well, same thing happened. So I feel like I can't remember. We have so many of these conversations. I can't remember if we had them last week or if we had them over text during games, or like same thing happened when Tim Tebow was playing for the Jets. He one off season, he went in and got really jacked and good luck throwing a spiral, jerk. You think you want to tell anybody when you're going to undergo this huge heavy lifting weight routine where you're going to eat 25 chickens a day and live on protein and free weights? You're going to be too slow to run. You're going to be too buff to throw. What the hell do you think? What the hell do you think you're doing?
Well, I would say that the training. What the hell
what the hell do you think you're doing besides constantly rifling passes and claiming that rifling passes into the dirt and claiming that Jesus is on your side? He's not on your side.
well, he had that going for him, so that was pretty awesome. It actually it really comes down to the coaching and how they're trained and what they're reminded of doing well or not well, and that brought us full circle to kind of what goes on with the Mets in the next week or 2 of several pitchers that are sitting there on the borderline. We've got Seth Lugo, who's going to be coming back soon. We have Carrasco, who's coming back very soon. We have Thor, who's coming back very soon. There's several positions in the starting pitching and
also
bullpen.
Seth Lugo coming back soon.
That's what I said. Yeah.
Oh, you did? Oh, sorry, I missed that. But
yeah, I led with that.
Oh, okay. So, when you think about it, here we are, not setting the world on fire offensively, dead last when it comes to runners in scoring position, and still in first place, and still over 500 in a league that is in a division that's very, very tough. And when we do get those arms back, when we can go to a Thor instead of a Joey Lucchesi, can you and when we've got someone like Seth Lugo in the pen that we can count on, instead of going let's see what happens when we send Sean Reed-Foley out there, which, by the way, based on the last outing, we should continue to do a lot. We are going to be again, provided everybody can stay healthy and continue firing on all cylinders, we are going to be so unbelievably pitching rich as a staff. It really is kind of the fact that we're in first place with that kind of production at the plate really says something. And if they don't turn it around, if Chili Davis doesn't turn it around sometime soon, we're gonna need it.
Well, I'm gonna make a correlation or a comparison of being quote unquote pitching rich to Jeff Bezos. You can never be rich enough. like I don't care if Lugo, Carrasco, Noah all come back and are spot on exactly the way they should. I will still be looking to the bullpen of saying, okay, which one of you guys I don't want to see the ball in your hand. I just literally can't trust. The thing I noticed this week, which I think we all were kind of anticipating, was Dylan Betances going from a shorter injured list with a particular problem to now a 60-day list, which may just be code, or it may just be a sign that he may have hurled his last pitch as a Met, which he did not throw that many as a Met in the time that he's been here.
No,
he was always an experiment since he was coming off of injury, and we wanted to see what he had because he did have so much when he was with the Yankees. But I have a feeling we may not see Betances throw again for the Mets. There are several guys that were completely just on the fence, on the borders. Hildenberger was one of them. Barnes was another one where, coming out of spring training and they kind of set the rosters. Zamora, he's already down. Yamamoto is someone we're waiting to bring up to come see. Zappucki. There's
Stephen Tarpley, as we speak, you said is still on the roster, but I can't see them wanting to stick with that experiment for too much longer. I think maybe you send him back down, get him to figure some stuff out, and we got some other like if you're playing Stephen Tarpley, come on, give us Jerry Blevins, come on, we deserve it, he deserves it. We would if you're content to have somebody come in and suck, then make us happy. Let us all as a collective Mets fan base go, hello Jerry, one more time, and then
we're gonna see Jerry in a Mets outfit, in a Mets uniform. I think this year, literally just because of the rotation through and making sure and seeing how everybody's doing. He's obviously I think he's pitching in Brooklyn right now, right? Is he with the Cyclones or
Yep.
So yeah, you know what? Keep showing up every day. Go through your workouts. Go through everything. Show them what you got. I'd love to see Blevins get a shot, not even necessarily a shot. Start off with calling him up so that he's in there and he gets his time in. Those last couple of games in spring training that he was in, those were sitting on the edge of my seat watching him. Come up and brought into tough situations. They didn't pussyfoot around with them. They brought him into tough situations.
Yeah, no, and I thought I can't remember the specifics of it, but I remember seeing him in spring training being like, I don't want to watch because I don't want to see him do badly, but I want to watch because I love him. And then he came in, I was like, that's more than serviceable. Like there is every reason why he should be brought out in tough situations, especially being a lefty. I think, like you said, you can never, Jeff Bezos of pitching, you can't have too much of it. And I don't know that we have anywhere near enough left-handed pitching to where it makes sense that we're not going to see him sometime really soon.
Yeah, I mean they've kind of done that a little bit, obviously, with definitely keeping Loop in there. David Peterson, in terms of the lefties on the team between starting pitching and relievers, I think they've actually done a fairly good balance. Having two starters as lefties, I think is a very, very good thing because, just going through the scheduling and how that kind of works out, I think has been nice. And in the bullpen, it would be I think it'd be very nice to always have a lefty situation up there. So I think this is going to actually work out in a couple of different ways in the next couple of weeks once we see Carrasco, Thor, and Lugo back. It's gonna really put the onus on the rest of the guys in the pen of like, you either got it or you're stepping aside.
Mm-hmm. Well, we have had a season so far that has been equal parts magical and equal parts kind of freaking distressing. And we're still in first place and over 500. I think it will be a telling week as we take on the Boston Red Sox. So I look forward to what we have, what we've got to say about this conversation, what we've got to say about the Mets this time next week. We should wrap it up, but before we do, what did you cook over the weekend?
Well, actually, I mean, I kind of had a repeat performance. My wife was so happy with the tri-tips that I actually went and got some more tri-tips, but I literally inverted every single thing about how I cooked the tri-tips that I did last week, which I did a reverse sear. I had them in the oven. I did only a dry rub on them. On these tri-tips this weekend, just to test it out, I did the exact opposite. I did an oil wash like on them first. Did a Coleman's mustard as a wet wrap around them. Which if you're not familiar with Coleman's English mustard, it is one of the spiciest mustards. It's equivalent to like a Chinese mustard you get in a Chinese restaurant, where it's just like so intensely hot and amazing.
So you want to hear a fun story?
Sure.
My grandfather, moved to America from England. To his job was running Reckitt and Coleman. Like he ran French's Mustard, Reckitt and Coleman, all these different things. Like he came. So like my father grew up like eating all that stuff constantly. Like any new condiment Coleman, any new Coleman condiment that was on the market, they ate it first before anybody else did. He sort of beta test it.
Well, it's a serious spicy mustard. You can get it actually powdered. Of the two ways to buy it in the stores,
the powdered is super versatile. You can use that on all sorts of stuff.
Yeah. It's like making wasabi, literally from a powder mixture where you're just incorporating a little bit of water and stirring it till you have a paste of it. It's the same thing with the Coleman's dry mustard.
Ooh, you made sort of like a. You made so you made sort of a wasabi-esque substance out of Coleman's dry mustard and water?
Exactly.
That sounds fantastic.
And I did a complete rub around the tri-tip with that, and then incorporated my dry rub. I seared it right on a hot really hot top on the stove. I mean, I'm sorry. And then I went oven with it, and it came out great. So like literally inverted completely everything from how I cooked it last week. Did the exact opposite. Still had really great results. And then I had a friend of my wife's.
Hold on,
really fast.
Like you made the second tri-tip because your wife liked the first one so much. Did she have a preference with the reverse sear or the sear at the beginning, the wet rub or the dry rub? Which one did she have a preference?
She actually really liked this way, the second way, but more particularly because she really dug the dry rub. She really dug the spices of it, and it really went well. So it just proven that there's all different ways to skin a cat. And to cook a tri-tip, and then
it's unfortunate to back those two expressions up next to each other that way. But go on.
Yeah, but what the hell? And then I actually held a little bit of like a master class for a friend of ours, one of my wife's teachers, young teachers, who she bakes, she cooks, and everything like that. But she really wanted an in-depth discussion on cooking pizza. So we had a little bit of a master class today of cooking pizza. So that's what I did. But you were doing a London broil that I was fascinated with.
Well, I mean, so I've done London broil before, and interestingly enough, I have found through a little bit of research that London broil does not necessarily denote a specific cut of meat. I think a lot of the time they're top round, but London broil is more to do with the means of preparation, because you can have different cuts of meat be a London broil, which I just found out. But yeah, no, I did a London broil, which was a piece of top round. And whenever I've cooked this in the past, I do. Here's the thing. It was I was definitely working outside of my comfort zone, because one of the things that made me love smoking stuff so much is it's a lower stakes game in terms of when you get it off the grill. It's not like, at this second it is ready. It's, I'm going to leave it on there for half a day, and it's going to be delicious kind of sort of no matter what. And I'm cooking it over the cold thing, so I don't have to worry about burning it. And so like the slow and low smoking method is a low stakes game. And I decided I was actually going to cook it on the grill like a London broil. I almost did it on the broiler just, for the sake of it. But one thing, man, I don't know if you find this, but like I love beef, but if I cook beef inside, whether it's a hamburger, whether it's some sort of something in the oven, like I feel like the house smells like beef for the next 2 days. And as much as I love the smell of beef, it's not for me. So when at all possible, I'll do it outdoors. So the weather was nice enough that I was like, okay, I'm actually gonna grill it. So I took your advice and I did a marinade, because top round is sort of a tougher, less fatty piece of meat anyway. So I did a marinade. Didn't do it overnight, but I got it in there for a good 3-4 hours in the fridge. And it was delicious. I cooked it at about 350, just flipping it every 4 or 5 minutes, really, until it had hit an internal temperature of 135 and perfect medium rare. And it was everything that it was supposed to be. The one thing about it, though, was I'm a marinade newbie. I really don't know what I was doing. And like I'd asked you, I was like, "What, Ray? What do I do with marinades?" And you gave me some great suggestions. But when I went to do it, I was like, "No, I need to find a recipe. I need specific amounts. I need to get, I don't want to screw this up." So I found a London broil marinade recipe, that had measurements and whatnot in it, and it was good. I liked it. But it involved brown sugar and apple cider vinegar, and it was, for my taste, it was a little sweeter than I would go on beef. It would have been perfect on pork. And so it was really, really good. And one of the things I loved about it, and I think this might be the advantage of the brown sugar in it, was usually I have to like really go. I like a reverse sear. I feel like it allows you to control things. So, I tend to cook it, and then the last 10 degrees, I just, as hot as all get out to get that nice sort of crispy crust on it. But I think part of the benefit of using the brown sugar in the marinade was it allowed it to like crisp up really nicely without me having to go flame on at the end.
Mm. I mean, my advice to you the other day in terms of a marinade, that is the true definition of a London broil is the marinade, because your top round flank steak that you're cooking, it really is all based upon what the marinade is, how long you're giving it. You gave it 4 hours, which is a minimum. That's good. And if you particularly don't say like the sweetness of, say, brown sugar, the brown sugar element to a marinade has to do obviously with a little bit of crystallization. And I would suggest give it another shot with the brown sugar, minimalize the brown sugar, balance it out with an acid of like a balsamic vinegar, soy sauce. They really play off each other well because they're in opposites. And there are things right off the shelf. Worcestershire sauce is fantastic.
It had Worcestershire sauce in it. Like and it's funny because like I looked up London broil marinade, like and I ate it and I was like, I've had this before. I feel like my grandparents used to cook this. Like it felt like a very traditional, like I couldn't place it specifically as London broil, but it did have an air of classic familiarity to it, where it was just like, oh, tastes like something my grandparents would make back in the day. So I think it was it involved. So it was the one thing I didn't have, and I wonder if this was a mistake. Like it called for red wine vinegar, but it said you can substitute apple cider vinegar if you don't have any. And I did apple cider vinegar, and I was like, apple and brown sugar, that might just be too sweet. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a bit more play of the offset with a red vinegar, like it has a real tartness to it. Apple cider vinegar is an extreme of that. So it's really just a bit of an additive as a flavoring, but it also makes a huge difference in the meat, because as you're marinating it, especially if you're marinating it for hours and hours and hours, the breakdown of the meat with those acids, with those sugars, it's fantastic. The one real recommendation I could always make about a London broil is doing, like, say, your rub and your marinade, etc., letting it marinate, but that thing needs to then sit out at room temperature, and the room temperature has a huge it comes huge into play with how those things are breaking down just before you're going to the fire, going to cook it.
So, like, I did marinate it in the fridge and I left it out, and I wondered about that. I was like, I should have probably taken an internal temperature reading, but I was like, what's room temperature? 72? I'm not sure. Like, so I think I let it get to room temperature, but that was one thing that was nagging me in the back of my mind. Like, did it really hit room temperature? But, like, so the benefit of letting it get to room temperature is it's, buttery and delicious and easy to cut, right? Like, that you're taking sort of like a kind of a tougher cut of meat, certainly less fatty, less naturally flavorful cut of meat, and sort of like the marinate and letting it come back to room temperature. That's supposed to be doing that, right? So it should have been sort of, not too chewy, right? If I got it right.
Yeah, I mean, that cut, that top round flank steak kind of cut is not the most soft or kind of sweetest of all cuts or anything. But if it's left in a marinade and is at room temperature, etc., for quite a while, the fibers of the muscles are relaxing. They're not only taking in those things. The salts, if you salted it, sitting at a room temperature, that salt is breaking down a bit more better than it would at, say, a colder temperature. So that's the real bones behind wanting to leave your meat sitting out, say, for an hour to get to room temperature, because of just how it reacts prior to you cooking it. You're releasing a lot of things that you want to release. You're letting all the different fibers of the meat relax a bit. Same in terms of the way that you want to rest your meat after it's cooked. That the fluids, the liquids inside the meat are all kind of coming together if you let it rest after you've cooked. The
redistribution of the juices. Well, I think marinades with, like, I love the slow and low approach, but I also love being able to eat half an hour after I start cooking. So I think this summer, like, if learning how to smoke things properly was my goal last summer, this summer I want to learn how to marinate and grill properly, and you, Ray, will be my Yoda.
I'm happy to be your Yoda. Cook well, you will.
Do or not do. Marinate or do not marinate. There is no try.
There is no try. Oh, Roundtree.